Do you love the recent Dune movies? Do you want to better understand what the heck is going on, but not necessarily read all the Dune books? This is the episode for you. Hi there, I'm Jim with Fantasy for the Ages, the father of the father son duo, who puts out all the content here on this channel about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. Today, just Jim, the father, bringing a great show to you all about Dune. It's a topic I'm always eager to speak about. It's more relevant today than the last time we chatted about it on our channel. My son Zach and I did a Dune episode all about this saga back in 2021. Just our 22nd episode. We've got over 700 videos out here now. So it seemed right to come back. Now is the time to discuss the Dune Saga in full video. I'm going to talk about the saga as a whole today, what I love about it, why I think it's one of the best, if not the best, science fiction sagas of all time. If you enjoy what you see today, if you appreciate it in any way, hit that like button down below. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It helps us out a ton. My son Zach is still not quite on the Dune bandwagon, though he has enjoyed the movies. He totally went to the theater, saw those, said they're fantastic. But I'm absolutely in love with the books. The movies are good, the books, incredible. So I'm happy to dive back into them with you today. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of what this saga is about first, so you can understand why it's so awesome. But let's get one thing straight right away. This is not hard science fiction. This is more what I like to call science fiction fantasy. Some might even say it's a space opera. Yeah, I won't go full space opera. That's a little more like Star Wars. This is no Star Wars. This has a little more firmness in science fiction. For example, the world building that's done. It's okay, but some of the rules of science are just played fast and loose. So, science fiction fantasy. The first part of this episode will be light on spoilers. I'm not going to ruin the books for you in this early part. I'm just giving you a very high level overview. I will warn you then when I'm going to move into full spoil segment. Even then, I'm not going to fully spoil the saga. In case you still want to go back and read it, there'll be some things left for you to discover. But I'm going to give you a lot more than I usually would in a spoiler-lite episode. So at that point, I'll make it very clear. If you don't want to know too much, that will be when you leave. But right now, you're safe. Stick around. And especially, if you enjoy the movies and you just want to know what's going to happen in the rest of what's to come, okay, this is a great episode for you. Frank Herbert is the original author of the Dune Saga, and he wrote the first 6 books. Amazing books. He intended to write one more to complete his entire story arc. What we got from him was Dune in 1965, and then Dune Messiah in 1969. Followed that with Children of Dune in 1976, God Emperor of Dune in 1981, Heretics of Dune in 1984, and finally Chapter House Dune in 1985. Unfortunately, after the publication of that 6th book and before he could complete the saga that he intended, Frank died in the hospital while recovering from surgery related to pancreatic cancer. Fans were left with fantastic books, but with some definite cliffhangers. Like, now what? We want to know what happens. So, years later, his son, Brian Herbert, picked up the mantle, partnered with established author Kevin J. Anderson, you might have read other things by him, to complete the saga. Because, complete? Yeah, they did so much more than just finish what Frank Herbert intended. Before concluding the main narrative, they went back and wrote 2 prequel trilogies. One of these The prelude to Dune just takes us back about 35 years, so one generation before the events we see in Dune. So that's where we get House Atreides in 1999, House Harkonnen in 2000, and House Carino in 2001. Now, this trilogy does an excellent job filling in the details, helping us better understand why and how things happen in that initial book of Dune. The second prequel trilogy, Legends of Dune, goes way back, like 10,000 years into the past. It gives us an amazing adventure in a time totally different than what we're looking at in Dune. This is a time where robots and artificial intelligence are in control of humanity, and it tells us how humanity overthrows the robot overlords, establishing the Atreides, Harkonnen, and Carino dynasties, actually, as well as humanity's aversion to computers. We finally get to understand why they don't want anything to do with thinking technology. I love here how the way we think of these three families, Atreides, Harkonnen, and Carino, what we know of them in Dune is very much different from what we get to see in Legends of Dune. It's considerably subverted, but I'm not going to give you more about that. This is spoiler light at the moment here. But the three books we're talking about are The Butlerian Jihad in 2002, The Machine Crusade in 2003, and The Battle of Corran in 2004. With the elements that Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson established in those two prequel trilogies now all laid out, they felt ready to move forward with completing the series. But they didn't just do one book. They looked at all of Frank Herbert's notes, and as they figured out where they could take this and what they would do, it ended up being two fairly large books. Hunters of Doom, that came out in 2006, and finally Sandworms of Dune in 2007. And with that, the series has an ending. And that's as far as I have read of Dune. I really enjoy what the prequels add to the experience of Dune, and I find the big finish far more satisfying because of them. Many readers don't agree with me. They actually think the prelude stuff and Legends of Dune just don't measure up, but I thought they were fantastic, especially Legends of Dune. But after these books are all done now, Herbert and Anderson were like, I think there's still some more stories we could tell. And we have an audience hungry for more books. So they've been busy ever since writing more. There are currently 9 more books out in the Dune universe. And I do intend to read these someday. We've got Heroes of Dune, which includes Paul of Dune, 2008, The Winds of Dune, that came out in 2009, and then it also includes Princess of Dune, which is the latest book to come out. It just came out last year, 2023. So they're not like a trilogy. Each one are standalone books, as I understand it. There's also the Great Schools of Dune. This includes Sisterhood of Dune in 2012, Mentats of Dune in 2014, and Navigators of Dune in 2016. And then there's the Caladan trilogy, which has the Duke of Caladan in 2020, the Lady of Caladan in 2021, and the Heir of Caladan in 2022. All 9 books fill in gaps between various other elements of the narrative, some in the far past, some right in the midst of the core series. Up to this point, I've covered just background in all these books, giving you a slight gist of what's out there, what they're about, but that's the end of my spoiler-lite section. If you don't want any plot points ruined, this is when you should say bye-bye. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe. But if you're still here, let's dive deeper into these plots. I'm going to really lay it all out. I'm not going to ruin the final ending, but I am going to tell you a lot of the story now. So stick around. I'm going to begin with Dune, where it all began. And let's start with just those first 6 books that Frank wrote. What happens here at this time is there's a galactic empire, not a long time ago, far, far away, but rather far, far away, and also far in the future. This, we come to understand, is set in our universe, but nowhere near Earth and nowhere near now. At this point, there is an emperor, and there's a Landsraad, which is ruling houses that basically form a political body to counterbalance the power of the emperor. The political system of this galactic empire is set up as a feudal system, with each of the powerful houses being similar to a feudal lord. Now, all of these people living amongst these various houses and places, they're all human. This is not Star Wars. This is not Star Trek. We don't have all these alien races. We have humanity everywhere. They've spread out all over the place and formed this massive galactic empire. Each house of these powerful houses that are represented in the Landsrod, they rule a planet, at least one. Some have more than one planet in their feudal fief, their fiefdom, to borrow those terms from medieval times. Additionally, besides these major houses, there are a few other major players in this universe that have something to do with the way things work and the way power moves. One of them is the Spacing Guild. Now, I got to explain this. The Spacing Guild is essential to the Empire because these planets are all in different solar systems all over the place, and nobody owns ships to just zip around. There's no Millennium Falcon here going from planet and solar system to solar system. No, no, no. In fact, people don't own spaceships like we own cars. That's not a thing. Instead, the major powers are able to move themselves, more often move things, as in trade, between systems, between planets, but they can't do it on their own. They have to use the Spacing Guild. The Spacing Guild has a monopoly on intergalactic travel, but not just by contracts. They literally control the ability to travel through interstellar space. Trade is essential in this universe, but to travel these vast distances at hyperlight speed, you've got to work with the Spacing Guild. They're literally the only ones capable of doing it. And the way they're able to do it is actually a closely held secret. They don't want others to figure out how they could do this too. I don't think they have to worry too much because it's pretty drastic what they have to do. But if you want to go planet to planet or have business between planets, you have to use Space Amazon. That's what they are. They're the ones that take care of the shipping, and they deliver. So here I introduce a unique thing in the Dune universe that we didn't understand entirely the reason for at first, as it gets rolled out over the first few books, but then it becomes more and more clear later in the series. So I'm going to explain more than you know right away, but here you go. The people of this time do not use high-level computer technology. They have machines, they have electronics, they have spaceships, but they don't have computers. This is an intentional design of the people of this day and age, because in the distant past, something really, really bad happened with technology. Think Terminator. Therefore, when that whole hullabaloo was over, anything approaching artificial intelligence was outlawed. They have technology, they have very advanced technology, but they have no machines that can process. Nothing that can come anywhere close to being smart. There's no Siri, there's no Alexa, So how do you compute intergalactic travel mathematics without that? Well, you use drugs, of course. People who have somehow developed the ability to pull off those kinds of computations are using drugs. And apparently it specifically takes one drug. Just this one drug in the entire known universe that the Spacing Guild has been able to utilize to give them the needed ability to space travel compute. And really what it is this drug gifts them with prescience, okay, where they can actually look ahead in time to see from where they are to where they're going, what else is going to be in the way, and therefore plan the routes they need to take to get there practically instantaneously. So they're going to know, is there going to be a meteor? Is there going to be a comet? Is there going to be another planet? Is there going to be a random discarded toilet seat floating through space? They can see it ahead of time with the help of this drug. And it allows these special people to pilot the perfect course and make the jump between locations. They literally foresee the right path to take when they're on their ship. As I understand it, this is not in any way supernatural. This is just an uber natural one. Humans who have become more with the help of this drug. They can see all the possible paths that the ship could take, and they can figure out which ones will not end in disaster. It's not a guess. They can discern this is what will happen if we go this way. This is what will not happen if we go that way. So it's enhanced brain power that they're developed to do this. It's not a seance, it's not magic. It may seem like magic to the uninformed, or at least a little bit mystical. But basically, with no computing technologies, mankind was forced to find alternate ways to enhance their own abilities. It would seem the solution they developed is supernatural, but no. What they have done is taken their own mental capacities to levels previously unreachable and which we cannot fully comprehend. So let's get back to the Spacing Guild. Not everyone who's in this Spacing Guild has this special ability to conduct space travel. There are particular individuals called navigators who no longer even look human. They're the ones who do this. They've actually transformed, mutated through prolonged use of the drug that gives them the prescience. It's a rather unfortunate side effect. It results in the fact that these navigators can't really do anything else. They can't even take care of themselves. All they can do is this one trick. They can take the ship from here to there. But it's a pretty important thing. The entire Spacing Guild is based around that ability. So everyone else in the ship, their number one job is to take care of the navigators. Their number two job is to maintain the ships. The navigators, they just do their thing. They are quite revered. Any of them who have the ability to now go and become a navigator, they're in. They want this because they are the end all of the Spacing Guild. It's the ultimate achievement to become a navigator. Okay, so you've got navigators who have replaced the computers that previously would have been necessary for space travel. But there are more ways humanity has grown to adjust to having no thinking computers. For example, you have mentats. These guys are awesome. Mentats are basically human computers. They have so trained their brains through studious, regimented programs of study and development and practice that they can retain an unbelievable amount of knowledge and draw it out on demand. They can also do calculations lightning fast, and they can basically do everything a computer used to do. But they are fully human. Some of them, their social skills are a little off. Their brains do work a little different. They're incredible. There are other categories of people with specially developed mental capacities in here. And I'm not going to go into all of them, but I've just covered navigators and mentats. Let me also mention the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit is a pseudo-religious society of women, kind of like nuns. The leaders of the organization are actually even called Reverend Mothers. It has all the feels and the trappings of a very religious-based thing, but it's not so much religion at all now. They don't have any real magic or spiritual abilities, but they do have some other trained special abilities. For example, they are highly skilled in combat with secret techniques. Think the Aiel in Wheel of Time. They understand the body and they can do things. They can strike in certain ways. They can strike at certain locations. That is very impressive and quick to incapacitate their enemies. And totally mystifying to anyone outside of the Bene Gesserit order. They have mental acumen that's amazing. They can recall great amounts of data. They're no mentat level, but still, they're very, very sharp women. They're also using all of that, very much known for their political shenanigans, manipulating the universe around them. Most of the men leading the powerful houses of the Landsrod have a Bene Gesserit at their side, whether it's a wife or a consort or just an assistant. Uh, they're coveted. They want to have them because you get all the resources and thoughts. Now, at the same time, the Bene Gesserit want to have their women at the side of powerful men, guiding them, shaping them, and manipulating the world to the way the Bene Gesserit wants to see it. They have interesting ways of manipulating the men around them to shape the political landscape. One of those ways is sex. I mean, they're very good. they this cut partly comes down to they 100% control the functions of their bodies. This is part of their training as well. They can therefore, do things that can physically help manipulate a man. Between their mental acumen and their physical abilities, the men are putty in their hands for the most part. That complete physical control even goes so far as Bene Gesserit women can decide if they're going to get pregnant or not. And when they do get pregnant, they get to decide, will it be a boy or will it be a girl? Complete mental control over what actually happens there. That is pretty incredible. It also ties in very nicely to the secret activity that is at the foundational core of the Bene Gesserit order. And that is they have spent centuries genetically manipulating and shaping mankind, making sure the right Bene Gesserit pairs with the right man to get the right result in the next generation. And sometimes it's not a Bene Gesserit that's the one who's there. It's just getting the right man and woman together because they followed all of these roots, all of these heredity lines, and they know what they want to see accomplished because they have a goal. I'll talk about that more in just a moment. Like I said, I want to remind you here as I'm talking about these things the Bene Gesserits can do. Some of this does not have any grounding in science. This is not hard science fiction. So let me remind you, there is not a way where a woman can just go, yep, girl. No, it doesn't work like that. But in Dune, it does. But let me talk about this genetic plan. Over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, the Bene Gesserit have been specifically grooming and developing the gene pool of humanity, all aimed to eventually create the ultimate human, someone that they believe has been prophesied, someone who is going to be the salvation of mankind. It would be going far too deep into the series to fully explain that, so I won't, but they have a name for this person, the Kwisatz Haderach. It's someone they have foreseen who will be this ultimate person able to help humanity fulfill its destiny. As the first Dune book picks up, the Bene Gesserit are literally one generation away. If all of their calculations and plans are correct, one generation away from the birth of the Kwisatz Haderach. This is huge. Again, after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, this intentional breeding program is finally at the cusp of accomplishing the grand mission. All they have to do now is get this one specific son of House Harkonnen to have a child with this one particular daughter of House Atreides. Now, the daughter's not around yet. They've got to create the daughter and then get her together with the young son from House Harkonnen. It's complicated, unfortunately, by the fact that these two powerful families, Atreides and Harkonnen, are completely at each other's throats these days. They are mortal enemies. They want nothing to do with each other. When our tale starts, House Atreides is basically portrayed as the good guys. Be aware, no one is perfectly good in this series. In that way, we're kind of leaning into reality. There's no complete black and white here. So everybody's got a little dirt on them. Nevertheless, the Atreides are portrayed as the good guys in comparison to their opposite in House Harkonnen. Clearly bad guys with many of the tropes we're comfortable with, and we just want to boo them. Oh, and then there's the Emperor, who's the head of another house, House Corrino. His family, his house, seems not just a benevolent ruler, but actually someone who is committed to doing whatever it takes to hold on to that power. The Corrino family has been ruling the empire for generations. So who do we meet? This actual emperor, his name is Shaddam the Fourth, and he's looking at this House Atreides, and he's not super comfortable right now. The ultimate goal of the Padishah Emperor line, Emperor Shaddam the Fourth, that's what he's called, the Padishah Emperor, is to remain in power. Actually, ruling well is secondary. Power is what matters. And House Atreides has been rising. They're an extremely popular and powerful family right now, nearly as powerful as the Emperor, perhaps. Duke Leto, the head of House Atreides, is seen as a paragon by all those wide and far. And he's a good guy, seemingly. I mean, that's who you want to be. You want to buy your Duke Leto t-shirt, man. Be on the Duke Leto fan club. Shaddam doesn't like that so much. So, House Carino enters into a backdoors arrangement with House Harkonnen and sets up a plan to betray House Atreides, helping them fall. And that's where our saga begins. House Harkonnen has, for many years, been the ruling house that has control over the planet Arrakis. Arrakis is potentially the most important planet in the known universe, because it is the only place in all of the universe where you can find spice. Spice is the naturally occurring substance that can be processed into the drug melange, which is what the Spacing Guild needs for their navigators. So interstellar travel is possible. Well, controlling that and working it as part of its fiefdom at the granting of the emperor has made House Harkonnen very rich, very powerful. Money still talks in this time. Well, as part of this backdoor plan, this betrayal, the emperor has taken the lease given to House Harkonnen of the planet Arrakis and now granted it to House Atreides. It's yours. Go make our spice, our melange. There will be great power in that. There will be great wealth to come. It's wonderful, right? No, it's not. The Atreides weren't looking for it. Now they're saddled with it. And I do say saddled because when you operate Arrakis, you carry this huge responsibility. As the book will say, the spice must flow. You have to keep that production going effectively because if the spice production drops or stops, Amazon goes defunct, okay? The Spacing Guild cannot do its job without a steady supply of spice. So we have to keep this going. Get over there and do it. Now, there are some challenges to mining spice. The challenges are actually the easy part. Okay, the Atreides know that when you go to Dune, there's two major challenges. One, there are people that already live there, the Fremen, kind of an aboriginal people who have been there before anybody else was there and made it their own and don't really like outsiders. And some of the Fremen are working with the Harkonnens and now are ready to work with the Atreides. But others are out there in the wilderness and can throw a wrench in the works from time to time. You have to walk a little delicately to not offend them and potentially have them rise up and push back. That could get ugly. But that's not the worst issue. The worst issue is there are worms on this planet. Not little inchworms. If you've seen the movies, you've seen the trailers, you know what we're talking about. These big, honking, monstrous sandworms. Godzilla for the Sahara, okay? And these things are very destructive, very dangerous, and you have to deal with them. You have to work around them in order to harvest the spice. Again, though, that's the easy stuff to deal with. What the Atreides realize is they've been given this opportunity, yay, to go to Arrakis, and they have to succeed or they'll be in trouble. So they didn't need it. They were fine without it. Why don't they turn it down? They have been honored by the Emperor, at the same time being entrusted by the Emperor with the important job of keeping the spice coming. To turn it down would be A, to say no to the Emperor who's given you a lawful directive, within his rights as the emperor. Somebody's got to make sure the spice is flowing. He's had the Harkonnens do it for years. Now he's saying it's your turn, do your part. Okay, so you're denying a lawful request of your emperor. And you're going to get rich doing this, so you're also slapping the emperor in the face, denying such a wonderful opportunity. If they literally say no, it would put the emperor in a position to look at all the other ruling houses and say, hey, you see this? House Atreides thinks they're better than the rest of us. They are denying my authority to say it's their turn to deal with the spice. They're flaunting their disregard for the empire. We need to make an example of them. And the emperor and his forces, as well as probably the Harkonnens, other houses, will all be coming down on House Atreides and destroying the house. Maybe taking away its fief, ruining it. Okay, so we can't say no, but saying yes means we're going to have to deal with whatever the Harkonnens and the emperor have set up on the planet to have them fail. They may have messed with the machinery that was left behind. They may have left traps, bombs, spies, assassins. Anything goes. It's this huge unknown that they're walking into. They have to say yes, which they do. And the head of House Atreides, Duke Leto, he leads his family and his entourage and his soldiers over to the planet Arrakis, fully knowing they're walking into a trap, but one they can't refuse. They're just going to do their best to stay on guard, diffuse traps, maybe turn it to their advantage, and probably fail. But again, their choices are say no and everybody dies, say yes and probably everybody dies, but maybe not. It's a good gamble. Now let me take a moment to give a teeny bit of extra understanding here. At the core of House Atreides, we've got three people. Duke Leto, the Lady Jessica, his Bene Gesserit consort and advisor, and their son Paul. Did you catch that? Their son Paul. At the beginning, I said we're one generation from the Kwisatz Haderach. We need the son of the Harkonnens to marry the daughter of the Atreides. Lady Jessica, the Bene Gesserit, is supposed to bring forth a daughter. Remember, perfect control of her body. Easy peasy. Why do they have a son? Lady Jessica, unfortunately, fell in love with Duke Leto and disobeyed orders and gave him the son that he desperately wanted. Crap. This puts them in a bad position now because Paul was never supposed to happen. Now, how do we get to the Kwisatz Haderach? What about Paul? Is he just a guy, a normal guy? Is there anything special about him when he was one generation away from the special person? He's been born at the wrong time. Maybe he's now the Kwisatz Haderach? It's all messy, but it's not according to plan. Lady Jessica didn't make a mistake. She very intentionally gave birth to Paul, but now she's in trouble with her superiors because of it. And part of that trouble is when she turns to them, because we're stuck in this trap, they say, hey, you made your own bed, you get to lie in it. They get no help from the Bene Gesserit order. Lady Jessica is on her own. Sure enough, Arrakis turns out to be a terrible trap. The whole thing goes sideways pretty quickly, with the Harkonnens and the Emperor's elite forces, Sardaukar soldiers, disguised as Harkonnens, coming in and wiping out pretty much the entire Atreides clan. We only see Lady Jessica and her son Paul escape. I use that word loosely because they escape out into the desert of Arrakis, which is not survivable. The planet is extremely arid to the utmost. There's no way that anyone has a shot to survive long in the desert. Duke Leto, he does not escape. He gets captured, he's directly betrayed, and he ends up dying fairly quickly, trying to kill a Harkonnen, and fails at that anyway. All we've got left really that we know about is Jessica and Paul. They're in this planet that technically seems to be one big desert. There's no nice places. It's just the whole thing is an arid sand ball. There are things about this planet that we don't know about, but over the course of the books, we do learn. But here at the beginning, we just see sandy, sandy, sandy. That's the deepest I'm going into. It's one of those little surprises. I'll leave it for you to discover when you read the book if you haven't done so yet. However, I will share that Jessica, Lady Jessica, and Paul, they survive thanks to the Fremen. The Fremen find them as they're wandering the desert, and they're in bad shape when the Fremen take them in, and they help them survive. They teach them what it takes to survive out in the desert. And this whole experience being with the Fremen transforms both Paul and Jessica. Paul, in particular, it changes him. He gets the ability and skills that the Fremen have with surviving in the desert and also their fighting abilities. He also already knows the Bene Gesserit fighting abilities because Lady Jessica, again against orders, taught her son how to fight like a Bene Gesserit. That's secret knowledge that no man is supposed to know, and Paul has it. So he gets to blend both of these styles, and something very new and fresh and powerful is going to come from it. But he also gets to develop some special abilities that he has that are genetic, latent abilities that are opened up during his time with the Fremen through consuming a very high degree of spice mixture. It turns out the navigators aren't the only ones who use melange, this drug. So do the Fremen for special ceremonies, but so do the Bene Gesserit to enhance their own abilities, to open their minds to possibilities. And when Paul goes through a ceremony with this high dosage of spice, his mind goes psh. He's able to see and know things now that should not be possible, but they are because of who he is. He basically becomes an uber human. He is more than human now. One of the key things it gives him is enhanced prescience. He has visions of the future that allow him to see the destiny of mankind. He's actually seeing multiple destinies of mankind. And the knowledge that his decisions moving forward have the chance to pick which destiny humankind will experience. That actually becomes rather weighty because he realizes his personal choices matter to not just him, not just his family, but to all of humanity. It's very daunting. He will be driven by these visions, and much of the rest of the books to come have their root in that prescience, in what Paul sees ahead, and the knowledge that humanity is doomed, I say, unless they follow one path. There's one specific path for humanity that will be its salvation. It comes to be known eventually as the Golden Path. And only that route sees a way for humanity to continue on forever and flourish. It's not a pretty path, though. Paul Atreides comes face to face with the choice to do terrible, horrific things now so as to set up humanity on this golden path, or take the easy route for himself and thereby doom humanity in the future. There's no easy choice here, people. He has seen through his prescience that humanity is in for a mess. No matter what he does, billions and billions of people are going to die. Paul's only choice is, do they just die through circumstances, or do they die because of choices he makes that kills billions of people so that humanity eventually will still be around and have, far in the distant future, a better future. So Paul starts along this golden path. He makes that choice. But in the end, he will not be the one to see it through. He will actually divert from the path because he will see, wait, there's another way. So he's going to step off the path. He's going to disappear from the series for a while. And his son is going to step into the path because he hooks up with one of those Fremen women and he's got a child. Leto II will be the one that steps up and develops even greater prescience than his father and chooses intentionally to become a monster in multiple ways. He's going to be the one that will intentionally take actions that kills billions and billions of people. But it will also lead to him rising to the imperial throne, where he will rule as a horrifying despot. And Leto II will make a choice that turns him physically into something far more than human, something that's nearly immortal. He becomes a sandworm type creature, and he will live to curate personally the destiny of the empire over a 3,500-year reign. All through that time, doing whatever is needed mercilessly to keep humanity on the golden path that only he can see. When he becomes this creature, nearly eternal, he becomes known as the God Emperor. And that's the title of book 4, God Emperor of Dune. So, as I bring up the Emperor Sandworm, let me talk just a little bit more about sandworms. I mentioned there are sandworms on Arrakis, this planet that is nicknamed Dune, thus Dune in all the books. A little easier to say than Arrakis, too. Spice, that thing they use to make the drug melange, turns out to be a byproduct of the giant sandworms on Dune. These monstrously huge Godzilla earthworms basically travel throughout the sands of doom, and they leave excrement behind them everywhere they go. Spice. Spice is the waste product of the sandworms. So wherever you have sandworms, you're going to have spice. And spice can be collected and refined into melange. This is the only planet in the known universe with sandworms, so it's a pretty special place. Leto II determines a way to become one of these sandworms, still with his intelligence, and empowered by the spice, he begins this eternal reign. Again, absolute dictatorial ruler for 3,500 years. It's a huge swath of time that these books, therefore, move through. You would think one character ruling for 3,500 years leaves everyone else behind. But here's one of the cool things about the Dune Saga. They come up with a technology to create golas. A gola is basically their version of a clone. A gola, anyone who is dead, if you take their cells, there's a group of people, the Bene Tlilax, hard to say this, Tlilax, more commonly referred to as the Tlilaxu. Anyways, they've developed the technology, very proprietary. No one gets to know how they do it, but they can create a perfect clone. Not only that, eventually it's discovered a process to shock the clones back to remembering who they truly are and all their memories up to the time they died. So, in essence, you're taking clones who are grown from the cells of the original person, rebooting them, and now they can go on and continue living. It's really the same person. It's like they died and you brought them back and they remember everything. So they move on. That is an incredible technology. It's one of the coolest things about the Dune Saga, and this was one of the earliest books in science fiction and fantasy that came up with a way that you could kind of say, ooh, look, immortality. You die? That's okay. We rebirth you. Whoa. Now, one of the key characters of the series, and indeed one of my favorite characters in the entire saga, someone you have met already if you watch the movies, is Duncan Idaho. What a name, right? Really cool. I really wonder if Indiana Jones was ripped off of Duncan Idaho. They seem like similar types of names and characters to me. Duncan Idaho is a warrior, a bodyguard, a brilliant tactician, and a favorite eventually of Leto II, the God Emperor. But Duncan, dies before there's a Leto II. Even though he died, the Talaxu bring him back as a Gola. Now, this is an early edition of a Gola. When he's brought back, he's not brought back as Duncan Idaho. He's brought back as a guy named Height, and he is put into the soldier cadre surrounding Paul Atreides. And he has a secret programming that, when triggered, will cause him to try to kill Paul Atreides. When the Gola is eventually triggered, the assassination attempt fails. But the trauma to the golem of being forced through this thing that had been done to him to try to kill Paul Atreides, who he naturally feels loyalty to, even though he doesn't remember his past life yet, that traumatic event shocks the latent cellular memory awake. So this is kind of how we learn how Golas can be rebooted into remembering everything they were before they were cloned. So this is the original, then, Duncan Idaho coming back. In Leto II's time, throughout his 35-year reign, he keeps a Duncan Idaho around. So he gets a Duncan from the Talaxu, and that Duncan hangs with him until he dies. And then the next one's ordered, rebooting at the same spot every time. It's like the Emperor needs a best friend, and he's got one, Duncan. So he just keeps bringing him back, what gets a little twisted there is usually Duncan dies when Leto kills him, because there's some issues with the way Leto's doing things that don't sit well with Duncan Idaho. So when he's first brought back, he's okay, he works with it, eventually he sours. Finally, he'll get to the stage where he's going to try to stop Leto, and that's when he has to be killed. And now we start again. Sometimes he doesn't make it that far. He dies in other ways. It's, a tough job he does sometimes. Bad things happen. But fascinating. Duncan Idaho again and again and again. At various points along the saga, we do see other characters that we met at the beginning brought back as Golas, like Paul's father, Duke Leto. He comes back. Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, she comes back. Almost everybody who was important and significant at some point comes back as a Gola. It's kind of cool. Lots of additional things go on over this 3,500-year period. You don't read about every year, but they hit on a number of things over the reign of the God Emperor, including lots of politics, plenty of Bene Gesserit stuff. A key element of the story, though, happens during the God Emperor's reign, where, because he's so horrible to humanity, some flee. They don't all stay. Some find ways to get out of the Empire. There's nowhere else to go, so they just go, hoping they'll find something. It comes to be known as the Diaspora. And you come to learn Duke Leto foresaw that would be one of the effects of being such a horrific God Emperor, that mankind would scatter, which was necessary for its survival. Staying together, it would atrophy. Scattering and spreading apart and becoming separated from each other, there would be a change, an evolution of the trajectory of mankind. And he foresaw eventually the Diaspora would return with new abilities, new skills, things humanity was going to need if it was going to survive. Amazing. Again, his prescience, he was able to foresee this. They do eventually come back. What triggers them to return is when Leto dies after 3,500 years. He foresaw that too. That was part of the plan, that eventually, after all these years, he would give up the ghost. Somebody would kill him, would succeed. And again, succeeding because Leto II foresaw it. That's the way it's supposed to happen. Then with him out of the way, all these scattered humans start coming back. And so when they come back in, we've got new things happening. We've got strange abilities. We've got new conflicts between humanity. But we also get one of the key linchpins of what's to happen here. And that's that some of these humans who come back aren't just returning, yay, they're fleeing something else. Something worse they found out there in deep space. That knowledge is part of what was a cliffhanger, if I remember right, when Frank Herbert passed away. And so that's part of what needed to be finished by Brian and Kevin J. because the entire saga is supposed to be about preparing humanity for this eventual confrontation with this other, and how does it work out? So Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson, they get to see Frank Herbert's notes. They get to have it in front of them of how this finishes. And as they're looking at it, they're going, okay, this is cool, but some of this comes out of nowhere. They understood what Frank had done, but they didn't think the readers were gonna appreciate it. This is too much of what? Really? Where did that come from? Which is why they wrote the prequels before finishing the series. They're like, we need to give our readers more background. They need to understand a little more of what's gone on before so it will connect well with where the series is going to finish. So the prequels, they show us the story of Dune actually started on Earth. That's where we learn it, that mankind comes from the same place we know mankind comes from. And that humanity had risen to develop incredible technologies, including artificial intelligence, and that unfortunately, these thinking machines, some of them became self aware and then rose up and took over everything. Basically, we find out artificially intelligent robots are in charge at the start of the prequel series Legends of Dune, and humanity just slaves working for their robot masters. Humanity tends not to do well in captivity, so we get the story of them inevitably revolting against the robots to reclaim their own destiny. So that revolution, it is successful. It overthrows the AI. Now free again, humanity makes those rules that we come to know about later, that laws saying we will never have thinking technology again. We can never take the chance something like this might happen once more. Unfortunately, triumphant humanity does not manage to entirely destroy the artificial intelligence that it fought against. Yes, it overcomes it, but the AI, supreme central intelligence, as it knows it's losing, takes one last shot at survival and shoots out into the stars a data burst, hoping that it'll just blindly reach somewhere, something beyond humanity's grasp where it might recoup, bounce back, regain its abilities, its strength. Humanity doesn't know anything about, it's just gone, but potentially it's still out there. So this information we learned from the prequel. Now, thousands of years later, we're seeing people of the diaspora, the scattering, coming back after having left during the God Emperor's ruthlessness. And what we find out is some of them ran into the AI again, now better than ever. Uh-oh. But before we move forward in time like that, I do want to comment on one aspect of the series that, for me does come off a bit hokey. I mean, I choose to overlook it to a degree because I really like the story, but really, guys, the issue is the fight between humanity and the robot overlords, which takes place 10,000 years before the story starts again in Dune. It involves an Atreides who actually starts out viewing the robots as the good guys. He serves them. He thinks they're right. Over the course of that Legends trilogy, does come around and sides with the rebellion. And two other key figures of that resistance group were a guy whose last name was Harkonnen and another whose last name was Carino. Okay, so we're supposed to believe that 10,000 years later, those names, those individuals led to these three most powerful houses in the Empire. To me, it surpasses credulity that anyone even remembers those names 10,000 years later, let alone their ruling houses. I mean, come on. Really? Now, there's another 3 prequel books focusing on how House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carino shape up into the houses that we meet in Dune. They're very interesting reads. I don't find them as pivotal as the Legends of Dune trilogy, but they do enrich the world a bit more, give you a more backstory, and I did enjoy them. Okay, now let's go back to the time of the core narrative. I'm not going to give you the final climax of the saga. I don't want you to know how it actually ends. I want you to read it for yourself. But it should be obvious now. All this builds up to the grand conflict again between mankind and artificial intelligence. And how's it going to resolve this time? I feel that Herbert and Anderson actually resolved this brilliantly. It was a great climax to the story. I think this is one of the best science fiction fantasy epics of all time. Frank Herbert introduced so many different concepts and abilities, and to be able to think about and create a technologically advanced society that has rejected advanced computing, and then he explains how they actually make that work. And then for him to come up with this idea of spice and all the things related to that, things that happened because of spice and Dune and sandworms. Sheesh. So creative. Then let's take into consideration how all these elements interweave in and among all the different political elements of the world he created. The Spacing Guild, the Bene Gesserit, the Honored Maters, who I didn't even mention, but they're there. It's another key piece of this story. This massive, complex, and deep world that's been built. It's incredible. It's amazing. It really is. But on top of all of this, I still think Frank Herbert's shining achievement is the creation of the Golden Path. To envision a character who has been gifted with the ability to 100% accurately predict the future. He's not guessing, he can see it, if only he's willing to do what it will take to bring that chosen future to fruition. Now, if you've read Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, you know about Harry Seldon and his psychohistory. I think I'm saying that right. This character is able to use math to predict the future very accurately. But it's just a prediction. In that series, the further we move along into the future, the actions of the story deviate from the predictions that are made at the beginning of the story. It just, as soon as one thing is done that's different than the math predicted, there is a escalating effect. The more you go, kind of a butterfly effect, and things will get farther and farther from the target. That happens there. That does not happen here in Dune. That's incredible. And there's a reason for it. Okay, you've got this character, Leto II, who figures out, okay, I can sacrifice everything I could have enjoyed so as to personally nurture and foster humanity down this golden path as a monstrous, immortal, non-human creature that will live 3,500 years, which will allow me to become this horrid despot of a ruler that nobody will ever truly value or appreciate. Also, I can maintain the conditions through that whole time frame that's necessary to allow humanity to eventually overcome and thrive. He thinks of this, Frank Herbert. That's amazing. There's much more I could talk about. Again, I barely touched on the Fremen. There's a lot more to them. But I think I've shared enough to give you the flavor of Dune, the scope of its epicness. Sufficient background to understand and appreciate the recent movies better for sure. And yet, I have intentionally left out enough so that if you still want to read those books, you have surprises awaiting you, and you're going to love it. But this is where I'll leave you. Again, if you enjoyed this, hit the like button. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time.